Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might shock you at first, but I want you to stay with me here. The greatest poverty that exists in our world today is not the poverty of the wallet. It's not the poverty of resources. It's not even the poverty of opportunity, though many will tell you it is. No, the greatest poverty we face is the poverty of thought. And here's what's tragic about it. Most people don't even know they're poor in this area. They walk around every single day thinking thoughts that are leading them in the wrong direction, making decisions based on faulty reasoning, and then they wonder why their lives aren't working out the way they hoped. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to think. That would be a waste of your time and mine. What I'm here to do is far more valuable. I'm here to teach you how to think correctly. And there's a massive difference between those two things. See, when you learn how to think correctly, you develop a skill that serves you for the rest of your life. It's like learning to fish instead of being given a fish. Once you know how to think properly, you can solve your own problems, create your own opportunities, and design your own future. Let me start with a fundamental truth that most people miss entirely. Your life today is essentially the sum total of your thinking up until this point. Look around at your circumstances. Look at your bank account. Look at your relationships. Look at your health. Look at your level of happiness and fulfillment. All of it, every single bit of it, can be traced back to the quality of your thinking. That's not to make you feel guilty or ashamed if things aren't where you want them to be. It's to give you power. Because if your thinking created your current circumstances, then changing your thinking can create different circumstances. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They think positive thinking is enough. They say, oh, I'll just think positive thoughts and everything will work out. Well, let me tell you something. Positive thinking without correct thinking is just wishful thinking. It's like putting a positive attitude on a ship that's heading in the wrong direction. You might feel good about where you're going, but you're still going to end up in the wrong place. Correct thinking means understanding the fundamental principles that govern success, prosperity, relationships, and personal development. It means thinking in harmony with the way things actually work, not the way we wish they worked. Let me give you the first principle of correct thinking. You must learn to think in terms of cause and effect. This is so basic, yet so many people miss it. Everything that happens in your life is an effect. Your bank account balance is an effect. Your weight is an effect. Your relationships are an effect. The quality of your health is an effect. Now, most people spend all their time dealing with effects. They try to change the effect directly. They want more money, so they buy lottery tickets. They want to lose weight, so they look for the magic pill. They want better relationships, so they try to change other people. But here's what correct thinking teaches us. If you want to change the effect, you must change the cause. What's the cause? The cause is your daily habits, your philosophy, your way of thinking, your level of discipline, your associations, the books you read or don't read, the seminars you attend or don't attend, the questions you ask or fail to ask. These are the causes that create the effects you're experiencing. And here's the beautiful part. You have control over the causes. You might not have immediate control over your bank account balance, but you have complete control over what you do with your time today. You have control over whether you educate yourself or entertain yourself. You have control over whether you take action or make excuses. I want you to understand something crucial here. Correct thinking requires you to be brutally honest with yourself about this cause and effect relationship. You can't blame the economy for your financial situation while you're spending your evenings watching television instead of learning new skills. You can't blame your genetics for your health problems while you're eating junk food and refusing to exercise. You can't blame other people for your relationship problems while you're being critical, ungrateful, and unwilling to work on yourself. Correct thinking means accepting responsibility for the causes you've set in motion and understanding that if you want different effects, you must create different causes starting today. Now let's move to the second principle of correct thinking. You must learn to think long-term. Most people are short-term thinkers. They make decisions based on what feels good right now, what's easy right now, what's comfortable right now. They eat the dessert because it tastes good right now. Never mind that it's adding to their weight problem. They skip the workout because they're tired right now. Never mind that they're getting weaker every day. They avoid the difficult conversation because it's uncomfortable right now. Never mind that the problem is getting worse. They spend money they don't have on things they don't need because it feels good right now. Never mind that they're digging themselves deeper into debt. Correct thinking means developing the ability to project into the future. It means asking yourself, if I continue doing what I'm doing today, where will I be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? This is a question most people never ask themselves because they're afraid of the answer. But correct thinking requires courage. It requires the courage to face the truth about where your current path is leading you. And here's what's fascinating. Once you start thinking long term, your decisions today become so much easier. Should you eat that junk food? Well, if you think about how you'll feel in an hour, maybe. But if you think about how you'll look and feel in 5 years, if you make that choice every day, the answer becomes obvious. Should you invest time in reading and studying, or should you watch another show? If you think about tonight, the show might seem like a better choice. But if you think about the person you'll become in 5 years through continuous learning versus 5 years of continuous entertainment, again, the answer becomes clear. Long-term thinking is like having a guidance system that helps you navigate through all the daily decisions and distractions. It keeps you on course toward your goals and dreams, even when short-term gratification is tempting you in another direction. The third principle of correct thinking is this: you must learn to think in terms of multiple perspectives. Now here's what I mean by that. Most people see the world from only one angle, their own. They think their perspective is reality. They think their way of seeing things is the way things actually are. But correct thinking recognizes that there are multiple ways to view any situation, and the quality of your life often depends on which perspective you choose to adopt. Let me give you an example. Something goes wrong in your life. You lose a job, a relationship ends, a business fails. Now you can think about that from the perspective of a victim. Why did this happen to me? This isn't fair. I'm unlucky. The world is against me. That's one perspective. And if you think from that perspective, you'll feel helpless, hopeless, and bitter. Or you can think about it from the perspective of a student. What can I learn from this? What did this situation reveal about my skills, my judgment, my character? How can I use this experience to become wiser, stronger, better? That's a completely different perspective, and if you think from that perspective, you'll feel empowered, curious, and ready to grow. Both perspectives are looking at the same event, the same facts, the same circumstances. But one perspective leads to growth and progress, and the other leads to stagnation and decline. Correct thinking means training yourself to automatically look for the most empowering, productive perspective in any situation. It doesn't mean denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It means choosing to frame reality in a way that serves you rather than in a way that weakens you. Here's another aspect of thinking in multiple perspectives. You must learn to see things from other people's point of view. This is crucial for success in relationships, in business, in leadership, in every area of life. Most people are so locked into their own perspective that they can't understand why others don't see things the way they do. They get frustrated, angry, judgmental. But correct thinking asks, how does this look from their perspective? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their fears, their desires, their pressures? When you can step outside your own perspective and genuinely understand someone else's viewpoint, you gain tremendous power. You can communicate more effectively. You can negotiate better. You can lead more successfully. You can build stronger relationships. Now let me move to the fourth principle of correct thinking, and this one is critical. You must learn to think in questions rather than in statements. Most people think in statements. I can't do that. That won't work. I don't have enough money. I'm not smart enough. It's too late for me. These are all statements, and statements close down your thinking. They end the conversation. They shut down possibility. But questions open up your thinking. Questions engage your mind in a search for answers. Instead of saying, I can't afford that, ask, how can I afford that? Instead of saying, that won't work, ask, how could I make that work? Instead of saying, I don't have enough time, ask, how can I create more time for what matters most? Do you see the difference? The statement shuts down your brain. The question activates it. The statement accepts limitation. The question searches for possibility. Your brain is an incredibly powerful tool, but it needs to be asked the right questions. Ask it poor questions, and you'll get poor answers. Ask it empowering questions, and you'll get empowering answers. Here's what's amazing about this. Your brain will work on the questions you ask it even when you're not consciously thinking about them. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you wake up with a solution to a problem you were thinking about before you went to sleep? That's because your subconscious mind was working on the question while you slept. But it only works on the questions you ask it. If you're not asking questions, if you're just making statements of limitation and impossibility, then your brain has nothing to work on. It just accepts those statements as facts and moves on. The fifth principle of correct thinking is learning to think in terms of what you want, not in terms of what you don't want. This is so simple, yet so profound. Most people spend most of their mental energy thinking about what they don't want. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to fail. And here's the problem with that. Your mind doesn't process negatives very well. When I tell you don't think about a pink elephant, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? A pink elephant, right? Because your mind has to create the image before it can try to negate it. The same thing happens when you think about what you don't want. When you think, I don't want to be broke, your mind focuses on being broke. When you think, I don't want to be overweight, your mind focuses on being overweight. You're actually programming your subconscious with the very images and ideas you're trying to avoid. Correct thinking means disciplining yourself to think in terms of what you do want. I want to be financially independent. I want to be healthy and fit. I want to have meaningful relationships. I want to make a difference. Now your mind has a positive target to move toward. It can work on creating that reality instead of trying to avoid a negative one. This also applies to your goals and plans. Don't set goals about what you want to stop doing or avoid. Set goals about what you want to start doing or achieve. Don't say, I want to stop being lazy. Say, I want to become disciplined and productive. Don't say, I want to stop being afraid. Say, I want to develop courage and confidence. Give your mind a positive direction, a worthy target, something to build toward. That's correct thinking. The sixth principle of correct thinking is this. You must learn to separate facts from interpretations. Now this is subtle, but it's incredibly important. Here's what I mean. Something happens and that's a fact, but what that thing means, that's an interpretation. And most people confuse the two. They think their interpretation of an event is the same as the event itself. Let me give you an example. Someone doesn't return your phone call. That's a fact. They didn't return your call. But what does it mean? Well, you could interpret it to mean they don't like you. You could interpret it to mean they're busy. You could interpret it to mean they didn't get the message. You could interpret it to mean they're dealing with a personal crisis. You could interpret it a dozen different ways. The fact is neutral. It's your interpretation that gives it meaning and emotional charge. And here's the key. You get to choose your interpretation. Most people don't realize this. They think the interpretation is automatic, that it's just obvious what things mean. But it's not. You're assigning meaning based on your past experiences, your beliefs, your fears, your expectations. Correct thinking means becoming aware of this process. It means learning to separate what actually happened from what you're making it mean. When you can do this, you gain tremendous emotional freedom. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstances and events. You're in control of how you interpret and respond to those circumstances and events. Let me give you another example. You try something and it doesn't work. That's a fact. You attempted something and didn't get the result you wanted. Now most people would interpret that as failure. I failed, I'm a failure. This proves I can't do it. But what if you interpreted it differently? What if you thought, I got feedback, I learned something, I discovered one way that doesn't work, which means I'm closer to finding the way that does work. Same fact, completely different interpretation, completely different emotional impact, completely different effect on your future behavior. Thomas Edison tried thousands of different materials before he found the right filament for the light bulb. Were those attempts failures? Not in his mind. He said he didn't fail. He just found thousands of ways that didn't work. That's correct thinking. That's the ability to interpret facts in a way that serves you rather than defeats you. And you can develop this ability. You can train yourself to catch your automatic interpretations and ask, is this the only way to look at this? Is this the most empowering way to interpret this situation? What interpretation would serve me better? The seventh principle of correct thinking is learning to think in principles rather than in techniques. Now here's what I mean by this. Techniques are specific actions that work in specific situations. Principles are fundamental truths that apply across many different situations. Most people are always looking for techniques. Tell me exactly what to do. Give me the 5 steps. Give me the formula. And techniques can be valuable. Don't misunderstand me. But techniques become obsolete. What works in one market might not work in another. What works with one person might not work with another. What works today might not work tomorrow. But principles are timeless. The principle of providing value to others in exchange for money will always work, whether you're selling products in ancient Rome or software in the modern world. The principle of treating others the way you want to be treated will always work, whether you're leading a small team or running a large organization. The principle of continuous learning and growth will always work, whether you're in agriculture or technology. When you understand principles, you can create your own techniques. You can adapt to changing circumstances. You can innovate and improvise. Think about it this way. If I teach you a technique, I've given you something to use in one specific situation. But if I teach you the principle behind that technique, you can create 1,000 techniques for 1,000 different situations. That's why correct thinking emphasizes understanding the why behind the what. Why does this work? What principle is operating here? When you understand the principle, you're no longer dependent on having someone give you the exact formula for every situation you encounter. You can think for yourself, you can figure it out, you can adapt and apply the principle in whatever way fits your unique circumstances. The 8th principle of correct thinking is this. You must learn to think in terms of both the visible and the invisible. Most people only think about what they can see, what's obvious, what's measurable right now. They look at their current bank account balance, they look at their current weight, they look at their current circumstances, and they think that's reality. But that's only part of reality. That's the visible part. There's also an invisible part, and it's often more important than the visible part. What's invisible? Your philosophy is invisible. Your attitude is invisible. Your work ethic is invisible. Your character is invisible. The quality of your thinking is invisible. The books you're reading are invisible to most people. The skills you're developing are invisible until you use them. The relationships you're building are invisible in terms of their future value. All of these invisible things are creating your future. They're setting in motion the causes that will create visible effects down the road. But because they're invisible now, most people don't pay attention to them. Correct thinking means giving as much attention, if not more, to the invisible as you do to the visible. It means understanding that what you're doing in private when no one is watching is creating your public results. It means recognizing that the person you're becoming on the inside will eventually be revealed on the outside. It means investing in things that don't show immediate visible returns, because you understand that the invisible growth happening now will create visible results later. Here's a question I want you to consider. What are you doing that's invisible to others, but that's creating your future? Are you reading books? Are you working on your skills? Are you building your character? Are you developing your philosophy? Or are you only concerned with the visible, what you can show people right now, what impresses people today, what gives you immediate visible results? Because I'll tell you something, people who only focus on the visible end up with very little that's valuable in the long run. It's the invisible work, the work that nobody sees, the work that doesn't get immediate applause or recognition, that creates lasting success. The ninth principle of correct thinking is learning to think both and instead of either or. Most people think in terms of either or. Either I can be successful or I can have a good family life. Either I can make money or I can do work I love. Either I can be strong or I can be kind. Either I can be confident or I can be humble. But correct thinking asks, how can I have both? How can I be both? This opens up a whole new realm of possibility. The truth is, most of the either-or dichotomies we create in our minds are false. They're artificial limitations we impose on ourselves. You can be successful and have a great family life if you think creatively about how to make that happen. You can make money doing work you love if you develop the right skills and create the right value. You can be strong and kind if you understand that true strength includes kindness. You can be confident and humble if you define those terms correctly. Confident in your abilities, humble about your continuing need to learn and grow. When you shift from either or thinking to both and thinking, you stop making unnecessary compromises. You stop settling for less than you could have. You start looking for creative solutions that allow you to have what you want in multiple areas of life simultaneously. This doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean there aren't trade-offs and challenges, but it means you're at least asking the right question. You're asking, how can I have both, instead of assuming you must choose one or the other. The 10th principle of correct thinking, and this is absolutely crucial, is learning to think in terms of contribution rather than consumption. Most people think in terms of what they can get. What's in it for me? What can I take from this situation? How can I benefit? And look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to benefit, with wanting to improve your life, with wanting to gain value. But here's what correct thinking understands. The way to get is to give. The way to benefit is to contribute. The way to gain value is to create value. Think about the most successful people you know or know of. What do they all have in common? They've created tremendous value for others. They've contributed something, they've solved problems, they've met needs, they've improved lives. And in return, they've been rewarded financially, professionally, personally. That's not a coincidence. That's not luck. That's a principle. The more value you create for others, the more value returns to you. The more you contribute, the more you receive. The more you serve, the more you're rewarded. But most people have this backwards. They think they need to get first and then maybe they'll give. They think they need to receive first and then perhaps they'll contribute. They're waiting for life to give them something before they start giving something to life. And they wait and wait and wait, wondering why nothing's happening. Correct thinking reverses this. It asks, what can I give? What can I contribute? How can I add value? What problems can I solve? Whose life can I improve? And then it goes out and does that, trusting that the rewards will follow. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but Jim, I need to take care of myself. I need to look out for my own interests. If I'm always thinking about giving and contributing, won't I get taken advantage of? And that's a fair question, but it comes from either or thinking. Remember what we just talked about? You can think both and. You can be smart about who you give to and how you give while still maintaining a mindset of contribution. You can create value for others while also ensuring you're fairly compensated for that value. You can serve others while also taking care of yourself. The key is this: lead with contribution. Start with the question of how you can help, how you can serve, how you can add value. Make that your primary focus. When you do this, when you genuinely become focused on contribution rather than consumption, something magical happens. Opportunities start appearing. People want to work with you. Doors start opening. Why? Because everyone is looking for people who can help them, who can solve their problems, who can make their lives better. When you become that person, when you develop that reputation, when you cultivate that mindset, you become valuable, and valuable people are always in demand. Let me share something else about correct thinking that ties all of this together. Correct thinking is a discipline. It's not something that comes naturally for most people. Our natural tendency is to think in whatever way is easiest, most comfortable, most familiar. We tend to think the thoughts we've always thought, which is why we tend to get the results we've always gotten. Correct thinking requires you to catch yourself, to be aware of your thinking, to question your automatic thoughts. and to deliberately choose to think in more productive ways. This means you need to become a student of your own thinking. Pay attention to what you're thinking about throughout the day. Notice the quality of your thoughts. Notice whether you're thinking in terms of causes or effects, short-term or long-term, questions or statements, what you want or what you don't want, facts or interpretations, techniques or principles, visible or invisible, either or both and, consumption or contribution. When you catch yourself thinking incorrectly, stop and redirect your thinking. This is like working out a muscle. At first it's difficult and tiring, but over time it becomes stronger and more automatic. Here's something else that's important to understand about correct thinking. It affects everything in your life. It's not just about business success or financial achievement. The way you think affects your relationships. It affects your health. It affects your happiness. It affects your sense of purpose and fulfillment. It affects how you handle challenges and setbacks. It affects how you treat other people. It affects the legacy you leave behind. Your thinking is the foundation upon which your entire life is built. Get the foundation right, and everything else becomes easier. Get the foundation wrong, and everything else becomes a struggle. Now, let me talk about some common thinking errors that trap people and keep them from achieving what they're capable of. The first is emotional thinking. This is when you let your emotions dictate your thinking instead of using your thinking to guide your emotions. You feel discouraged, so you think discouraging thoughts. You feel afraid, so you think fearful thoughts. You feel angry, so you think angry thoughts. Now, emotions are important, and I'm not suggesting you ignore them or suppress them. But correct thinking means recognizing that emotions are signals, not directors. They give you information, but they shouldn't make your decisions for you. When you feel discouraged, that's a signal to check your thinking. Are you thinking about things correctly? Are you focusing on what you can't control instead of what you can? Are you thinking short-term instead of long-term? Are you making statements instead of asking questions? Use your thinking to analyze the emotion, understand it, and then decide how to respond. Don't let the emotion take over your thinking and lead you to conclusions that aren't based on facts or reason. Another common thinking error is wishful thinking. This is when you want something to be true so badly that you convince yourself it is true, even when the evidence says otherwise. This investment is guaranteed to make me rich. This relationship will work out even though we have fundamental incompatibilities. I can eat whatever I want and still lose weight. Wishful thinking feels good in the moment, but it leads to disappointment and failure down the road. Correct thinking requires you to be honest with yourself, to look at the facts objectively, to test your assumptions, to be willing to admit when you're wrong or when something isn't working. A third common thinking error is lazy thinking. This is when you accept the first answer that comes to mind, the conventional wisdom, what everyone else thinks, without doing your own analysis. That's just the way things are, that's just the way I am, that's impossible, that's what everyone says, so it must be true. Lazy thinking is dangerous because it stops you from discovering new possibilities, from innovating, from creating breakthroughs in your life. Correct thinking requires mental effort. It requires you to dig deeper, to question assumptions, to look beyond the obvious, to think things through carefully and thoroughly. Here's another thinking error, reactive thinking. This is when you're constantly reacting to circumstances instead of creating circumstances. Something happens and you react. Someone says something and you react. The market changes and you react. You're always responding to external events rather than acting based on your own plans and priorities. Correct thinking is proactive. It means deciding in advance how you want your life to go and then taking actions consistent with that vision, regardless of what's happening around you. It means having a plan and working your plan instead of just bouncing from one reaction to another. Now let me tell you about the relationship between thinking and results, because this is where most people get confused. Most people think that good thinking automatically produces good results. They think, if I think correctly, I'll succeed. But that's not quite how it works. Correct thinking doesn't guarantee success. What it does is put you in the best possible position to succeed. It increases your odds dramatically. It helps you make better decisions, take better actions, avoid costly mistakes, and learn from experiences more effectively. But there's still execution, there's still action, there's still persistence through setbacks and obstacles. Think of it this way. Correct thinking is like having an accurate map when you're trying to reach a destination. The map doesn't get you there automatically. You still have to make the journey, you still have to put in the miles, but having an accurate map means you're heading in the right direction, you're taking the most efficient route, and you're not going to waste time and energy going the wrong way. That's what correct thinking does for you. It points you in the right direction and helps you navigate effectively, but you still have to do the work. This is important because some people use positive thinking or correct thinking as a substitute for action. They think if they just think about it enough, it will happen. They visualize success but don't take the steps to create success. That's not correct thinking. That's magical thinking. Correct thinking includes understanding that you must put in the work, that you must take consistent action, that you must persist through difficulties. Thinking correctly doesn't eliminate challenges. It helps you handle them more effectively. It doesn't make the path easy. It helps you stay on the path when it gets hard. Let me also address something that confuses people. The difference between thinking correctly and being smart. Some people assume that correct thinking is only for people with high IQs or advanced education. But that's not true at all. I've known plenty of highly educated people who think incorrectly and struggle in life. And I've known plenty of people without formal education who think correctly and achieve tremendous success. Intelligence is about how quickly you can process information or solve complex problems. Correct thinking is about the quality of the principles you use to guide your thoughts and decisions. You don't need to be a genius to ask, how can I create more value? You don't need a PhD to think in terms of cause and effect. You don't need to be brilliant to focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. These are disciplines of thought that anyone can learn and apply, regardless of their IQ or educational background. In fact, sometimes being too smart can be a disadvantage if it leads to overcomplicating things or rationalizing poor decisions. Correct thinking is about wisdom, not just intelligence. And wisdom comes from applying sound principles over time. Now let me share with you how to develop the skill of correct thinking, because knowing these principles is one thing, but applying them consistently is another. First, you need to create space for thinking. Most people are so busy, so distracted, so overstimulated that they never actually think deeply about anything. They react, they respond, they consume information, but they don't think. Set aside time regularly, daily if possible, where you're not consuming anything, where you're not being entertained, where you're not distracted. Just sit with your thoughts, think about your goals, think about your challenges, think about what you're learning, think about what you need to change. Second, question everything, especially your own beliefs and assumptions. Just because you've always thought something doesn't mean it's true. Just because everyone around you thinks something doesn't make it correct. Ask yourself, why do I think this? What evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts this? What would someone who disagreed with me say? Is there another way to look at this? This kind of questioning keeps your thinking fresh and prevents you from getting stuck in mental ruts. Third, study people who think well. Read biographies of successful people. Pay attention to how they approach problems, how they made decisions, how they thought about challenges and opportunities. You'll start to notice patterns. You'll see the principles of correct thinking in action. You'll learn from their wisdom without having to make all the mistakes yourself. Books are one of the greatest bargains in the world for this reason. For the price of a meal, you can get inside the mind of someone who spent a lifetime learning valuable lessons. That's an incredible deal. Fourth, practice. You don't develop the skill of correct thinking by just understanding these principles intellectually. You develop it by applying them over and over again until they become habitual. When you catch yourself thinking in terms of what you can't do, stop and rephrase it as a question about how you can do it. When you find yourself focusing on what you don't want, stop and redirect your attention to what you do want. When you realize you're thinking short-term, force yourself to project into the future. This practice, done consistently, rewires your brain. It creates new neural pathways. It makes correct thinking more automatic. Fifth, get feedback. Share your thinking with people you trust and respect. Tell them about a decision you're making or a problem you're trying to solve, and ask them how they see it. You're not looking for them to make your decision for you, but you want to expose yourself to different perspectives. This helps you avoid blind spots in your thinking. Sometimes we're so close to a situation that we can't see it clearly. A trusted friend or mentor can offer a perspective that opens up new possibilities we hadn't considered. Let me talk now about the compound effect of correct thinking, because this is where it gets really exciting. When you think correctly about one area of your life, it affects other areas. When you develop discipline in your thinking about your finances, that discipline spills over into your thinking about your health, your relationships, your career. When you learn to think long-term about your business, you start thinking long-term about your personal development. When you learn to focus on contribution in your work, you start thinking about contribution in your family and community. Correct thinking in one area strengthens your ability to think correctly in all areas. And over time, the results compound. Small improvements in your thinking lead to small improvements in your decisions. Small improvements in your decisions lead to small improvements in your actions. Small improvements in your actions lead to small improvements in your results. And these small improvements, accumulated over months and years, create massive changes in your life. This is the power of the compound effect. It's not dramatic in any single day, but it's absolutely dramatic over time. Think about it this way. If you improve the quality of your thinking by just 1% every day, by the end of a year, you wouldn't be 1% better, you'd be transformed. That's how compound growth works. The difference between someone who thinks correctly and someone who doesn't isn't necessarily huge on any given day. But over a year, over 5 years, over a lifetime, the difference is astronomical. It's the difference between struggle and success, between regret and fulfillment, between getting by and thriving. Now, I want to address something that stops many people from developing correct thinking: the fear of being wrong. Some people don't want to question their beliefs because they're afraid of what they might discover. They're afraid they might have been wrong about something important. They're afraid they might need to change. They're afraid they might need to admit they made mistakes. But here's what correct thinking understands. Being wrong is not a problem. Staying wrong is the problem. Being willing to discover you were wrong and correct your course is a strength, not a weakness. Some of the most successful people I've known have changed their minds about major things multiple times throughout their lives. They learned new information, gained new experiences, and thought differently as a result. They weren't wishy-washy or unstable. They were adaptable and wise. They valued truth more than being right. They valued growth more than comfort. They understood that changing your mind based on better information is intelligent, not weak. Don't let pride or fear keep you stuck in incorrect thinking. Be willing to question yourself, to learn, to grow, to change when change is needed. Let me share another crucial aspect of correct thinking. Understanding the difference between problems and facts. A fact is something that's true whether you like it or not. A problem is something that can and should be changed. Many people waste tremendous mental and emotional energy treating facts like problems. They stress about things they can't control. They complain about realities that aren't going to change. They wish things were different instead of accepting what is and working with it. For example, aging is a fact. You're going to get older. You can't change that. But how you age, your health, your vitality, your mental sharpness, that's influenced by decisions you make. That's a problem you can work on. The economy is largely a fact for most people. You don't control interest rates or market cycles, but how you position yourself financially to weather economic changes, that's something you can influence. That's a problem you can solve. Correct thinking means discerning between what you can change and what you can't, and then focusing your mental energy on what you can actually affect. Here's another element of correct thinking I want you to understand: the importance of thinking in seasons. Everything in life operates in seasons. There are seasons for planting and seasons for harvesting, seasons for building and seasons for maintaining, seasons for learning and seasons for earning, seasons for intense work and seasons for rest and renewal. Many people fail because they're trying to harvest when they should be planting, or they're resting when they should be working, or they're trying to maintain when they should be building. Correct thinking means understanding what season you're in and thinking accordingly. If you're in a planting season, don't expect immediate harvest. Think long term, be patient. Do the work that needs to be done now even though you're not seeing visible results yet. If you're in a harvest season, don't waste it. Gather in the rewards of your previous planting. If you're in a learning season, don't rush to the earning season prematurely. Get the education and skills you need first. Understanding seasons helps you align your thinking and expectations with reality, which prevents frustration and poor decisions. Now let me talk about thinking and language, because these two are intimately connected. The words you use shape your thinking, and your thinking shapes your words. If you constantly use victim language, I can't, I have to, they made me, I'm stuck, you'll think like a victim. If you use empowered language, I choose to, I will, I can learn, I'm working on, you'll think like someone in control of their life. Pay attention to your language. Listen to how you talk about yourself, your circumstances, your challenges, your future. Are you using language that reflects correct thinking, or are you using language that reinforces incorrect thinking? And here's something powerful. Changing your language can help change your thinking. If you find yourself thinking incorrectly about something, try speaking about it differently. Instead of saying, I'm terrible with money, say, I'm learning to manage money better. Instead of saying, I always fail at this, say, I haven't succeeded yet, but I'm getting better. The language shift might feel artificial at first, but over time it actually changes how you think about yourself and your capabilities. Your brain starts to believe what you repeatedly tell it. Let me address one more critical aspect of correct thinking: thinking about time. Most people think about time incorrectly. They think they don't have enough time. They think time is scarce. They think they're victims of time. But correct thinking understands that everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. The question isn't how much time you have, it's what you do with the time you have. It's about priorities, not time management. When people say they don't have time for something, what they usually mean is it's not a priority for them, and that's fine, but be honest about it. Correct thinking about time means understanding that time is your most valuable resource because it's the only one you can't get more of. You can make more money, you can build more relationships, you can learn new skills, but you can't create more time. So the quality of your thinking about how you invest your time is crucial. Are you spending time or investing time? Are you using time or killing time? Are you making the most of your time or letting it slip away? These are questions correct thinking asks regularly. Also, understand that how you spend your time today is creating your future. Every hour you invest in learning is creating a more knowledgeable future you. Every hour you invest in building relationships is creating a more connected future you. Every hour you invest in your health is creating a healthier future you. And every hour you waste, every hour you spend on meaningless activities, that's creating a future where you'll wish you had done things differently. Correct thinking about time means being very intentional about how you use it, because you understand that time once spent is gone forever. Now, as we come toward the conclusion of our time together, let me tie all of this together with a fundamental truth. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thinking, not by your circumstances, not by your background, not by what's happened to you in the past, but by how you think about all of those things and what you do as a result. Two people can face the same circumstances and one will sink while the other soars. What's the difference? The difference is in how they think. The person who sinks thinks like a victim. They blame, they complain, they make excuses. They focus on problems rather than solutions. They think short term. They think about what they can't control. They accept limitations without questioning them. The person who soars thinks differently. They take responsibility. They look for opportunities. They find solutions. They think long term. They focus on what they can control. They question limitations and look for ways around them. Same circumstances, different thinking, vastly different results. So here's what I want you to understand. You have far more control over your life than you might think you do. You might not control what happens to you, but you absolutely control how you think about what happens to you. And that control over your thinking gives you tremendous power to shape your future. When you commit to thinking correctly, when you apply these principles consistently, when you make it a discipline and a practice, you put yourself in a position to create the life you really want. This isn't about positive affirmations or wishful thinking. This is about developing a clear, disciplined, principle-based approach to thinking that serves you in every area of life. It's about thinking in terms of causes rather than effects, long-term rather than short-term, questions rather than statements, what you want rather than what you don't want, facts rather than interpretations, principles rather than techniques, both the visible and invisible, both and rather than either or, and contribution rather than consumption. These aren't just nice ideas. These are practical, powerful tools that will transform your results when you apply them. I want to leave you with this challenge. Starting today, commit to becoming a student of your own thinking. Pay attention. Notice what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it. When you catch yourself thinking incorrectly, stop and redirect. Ask better questions. Look for better perspectives. Think longer term. Focus on what you can control. Make this a daily practice. Don't expect perfection. You'll still catch yourself thinking incorrectly sometimes. That's normal. That's part of being human. But each time you catch it and correct it, you're building the skill. You're strengthening the muscle of correct thinking. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination. You don't master thinking once and then you're done. You continue to refine it, to improve it, to deepen it throughout your entire life. The most successful people I know, even after decades of achievement, are still working on the quality of their thinking. They're still reading, still learning, still questioning their assumptions, still looking for better ways to think about things. They understand that correct thinking is not a skill you acquire. It's a practice you maintain. So, take what we've talked about today seriously. These aren't just interesting concepts to think about and then forget. These are life-changing principles to apply and practice. Your future is being created right now by the thoughts you're thinking today. Make sure those thoughts are taking you where you want to go. Make sure you're thinking correctly about what matters most. Make sure you're building a philosophy of thought that will serve you for the rest of your life. The greatest gift you can give yourself is the ability to think correctly, because that ability will serve you in ways that nothing else can. It will help you make better decisions. It will help you solve problems more effectively. It will help you build better relationships. It will help you create more success. It will help you handle setbacks and challenges with resilience and wisdom. It will help you live with purpose and fulfillment. All of this comes from learning to think correctly. You have within you right now the capacity to think at levels you've never thought at before. You have the ability to see things you've never seen before. You have the potential to solve problems you haven't been able to solve. You have what it takes to create the future you desire. But it all starts with your thinking. It starts with making the commitment to think correctly about what matters most. It starts with applying these principles every single day until they become part of who you are. So make that commitment today. Commit to being a correct thinker. Commit to questioning your assumptions. Commit to thinking long term. Commit to focusing on causes rather than effects. Commit to asking empowering questions. Commit to seeing multiple perspectives. Commit to understanding principles. Commit to giving your attention to both the visible and the invisible. Commit to both and thinking instead of either or thinking. Commit to contribution rather than consumption. These commitments lived out daily will change everything. Your life will never be the same once you learn to think correctly, and that's exactly what I want for you. I want you to experience the freedom, the power, the joy that comes from knowing how to direct your own thinking toward the results you desire. I want you to look back years from now and recognize that this was a turning point, that this was when you decided to take control of your thinking and therefore your life. That decision, that commitment made all the difference. So go forth and think correctly. Apply these principles. Practice this discipline and watch as your life transforms in ways you might not even be able to imagine right now. Because when you change your thinking, you change everything. That's the promise, that's the power, that's the truth I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for your time and attention. Now go make the most of what you've learned.